We're ready to welcome you back to the fourth program that we've developed for Hannibal's Other Voice. What we are attempting to do here is provide information to people in and around Hannibal about issues of interest regarding city government and other activities that bear upon city government. And today we're going to talk about business development. Business development and economic development are very important to the city of Hannibal. Our economy is what we depend on in order to have a place to live and a government to operate in it. So today we're going to touch on two topics where we believe the city could do better. The first is the Hannibal Board of Public Works again. In an earlier episode, we talked about how the meter tax or customer charge that the Board of Public Works has affects residential customers and increases the cost of electricity to every customer in Hannibal. The same applies and is even more stunting when it comes to businesses, that is, commercial customers. The Board of Public Works in the electric department has two types of customers, those that use single-phase electric power and those that use three-phase electric power. All of them have the same type of meter tax customer charge that residential customers have. In this last increase the board approved, the electric meter charge or meter tax for commercial single-phase customers rose $1 from $45 to $46. For the three-phase customers, the larger customers, there was no increase. When you take that customer charge and annualize it, it comes to $552 a year for a new startup business or a business relocating to Hannibal. And the situation of a startup business, after that startup business makes arrangements for space, utilities, insurance, taxes, equipment, inventory, payroll, very often they don't have room for additional charges where they're paying and receiving nothing for that payment. In addition to the electrical meter tax, the Board of Public Works also has a $26.80 meter tax for any water service up to 3/4 of an inch. If the water service is larger than that, 1 inch or 2 inches or whatever it might be, that meter tax goes up accordingly. Now for sewer, for some reason, everybody pays the same $11 in meter tax, and that's from residential to industrial. So if you want to start a business in Hannibal, you have to take into account that you're going to pay annually $552 for electric meter taxes, $321.60 at a minimum for water meter taxes, and $132 for sewer meter taxes. That total comes to $1,005.60 on an annual basis. And the aggravating thing about that, I would assume to any business trying to get going in Hannibal, is the business gets nothing for that money. In addition to that $1,005 plus, they have to pay for the electric by the kilowatt hour and water by the gallon. And so it's just a tax that goes to the Board of Public Works for whatever purpose they want to make of it. The question that I think any businessman would have would be this: if you had the choice, would you rather pay $1,005.60 for nothing, or in the alternative, would you rather pay 1 cent more per kilowatt hour for your electric? If the Board of Public Works relied simply on selling their products, electric and water, and of course we pay twice for water, they would be able to come up with a rate to where they could break even, which is what they should be doing, and not inhibiting business development in the city of Hannibal. Now, the second part of our presentation has to do with incubator space. That is space that can be provided and formerly was provided for business development within our community. Many years ago, I guess a little better than 30 years ago, the old shoe factory on South Maple Avenue was developed as incubator space, and there were at least 5 businesses that started out in that space. Now, over time, the city council, even though that project was profitable and brought in positive revenue for the city of Hannibal, the council decided that it wasn't worth it, and the property was eventually abandoned. The various parts of that building were sold to the private businesses that were there at roughly a nickel or a dime on the dollar in value. However, the idea of having space where someone in our community, someone in the area would like to start a business in Hannibal, having a space where they could get an initial break on rent, taxes, and insurance, and they'd have that break on all 3 of those factors if it were a city building made available for business development. It would make it a lot easier for someone to take a good idea and see whether or not they could make a successful business from it. The city of Hannibal at this time has any number, I'd say at least a dozen sites that are appropriately zoned, that are near utilities, that are on major streets or thoroughfares, and are out of the flood zone. The suggestion would be, why doesn't the city take its economic development money and at least make a start? For example, they could very reasonably erect a 30 by 50 foot building and see whether or not they could lure somebody to try to start a business in it, with the understanding that perhaps for the first several months, they wouldn't have any rent charge. But then as they got going, the rent would come in to where it would grow over time and over their success. If that worked, then there's plenty of room for them to add additional incubator buildings, and it could blossom into something where we would have an opportunity for anyone who has the idea and the will and the energy to start a business would have a place to do so. So that's our message for today with respect to incubator space. It is something that the city council, the city management should look at very closely and see whether or not some system can be put into place where that kind of space can be made available. Now, before we close, I would like to say that our last program had to do with the Hannibal Municipal Assistance Corporation, a device, I hope you watched that show, a device whereby the city council can borrow money long-term without voter approval as required by the Missouri State Constitution and the Hannibal City Charter. The thing that we reported in that last program was that the city had allowed that corporation to become administratively revoked by the Secretary of State's office for failure to file the annual registration statements. Since that time, perhaps someone at City Hall saw that program, and in the intervening time, they have filed all 5 of the delinquent annual registrations, and they have reappointed individuals whose terms had expired to serve on the board of directors of that corporation. It's still not a good idea to try to get around the constitutional requirement that we, the citizens, get to vote on borrowing money, but at least the corporation is now legal. And finally, and in closing, the next time we get together, the subject matter is going to be Hannibal's secret municipal budget and its constant use of closed meetings to transact any substantive business. Now, we'll be taking a look at 2023's 42 closed meetings and the 45 closed meetings the City Council had through October of last year. So we hope that you will Stay with us and take a look at the additional programs that we put out. And again, we're always interested in what your comment is or what your suggestions might be. And we thank you very much for your attention.